Morning, guys. I hope you guys have been good and you've enjoyed your Day celebration. So I'll get us started with our Angular setup so that I take you guys through the simplest ways to approach making API calls. Again, I was going through code for groups like Churi's group, and I see people actually doing some wizardry on their code. But today I'll take us through the simplest way to ensure that you've made an API call. So let's go ahead and generate our project. Let's do continue. Call yes, bootstrapping CSS. Few seconds. So is there anyone here who is still having problems with Angular at this time? It would be nice to see people's pain points, so that even as I go through this particular exercise, I keep those pain points in mind. I think you can just post them on the chat, and I'll periodically come and just check on them. Anyone with any questions in the meantime? Still need to Angular components and modules as part of the introduction. Okay. Now, awesome. So our thing is okay. Let's cd into our thing. Do npm install. Then just for time's sake, I hope you guys will allow me to use Bootstrap for this illustration. But for any of the class names that we will be using, if anyone has any questions on maybe the background of how the CSS works, I think I'll be keen to explain what the class name that we will borrow actually do, or how they're actually written from a CSS point of view. Yeah, awesome. So let's install Bootstrap. Awesome. Yeah. So let's open. I think let's just run an ngserve and ensure our guy is running. Serve. Let's use port 5000. No wait, 5000. I'm running another Angular project on the default port, so it needs to just allow me to change my port. Yeah, awesome. 5000. Awesome. So we have our default page for Angular, so that means we're moving on nice. Yeah. So the first thing we do is get rid of the default text that's in our component. And if you guys remember what I said last time, where what you need on this app component, because I've seen on Martin's presentation they have all their code in the app component HTML. I don't know if you guys have implemented routing, having your code on the app component HTML is not recommended. So yeah, create components for the particular components you need. So generate component for the tax. Let's say tax. Then, because we'll also need the navbar and footer, I will generate those components in a folder called shared. So let me just navbar. Yeah. So this action will also create for us a folder called shared, and then there we can also generate our footer within the same folder. And then I will show you guys how we will import using the app selectors into this very page where they will be shared components. Instead of having them put in every component, we'll just have them placed here so that these are completely shared. So up, so yeah, shared. Let's go and look at the selector names for footer, up footer. Maybe come up there and come and also check for the navbar. Yeah, selector is up navbar. You can put it at the top. Yeah. And next. So we'll also need a service for our APIs. So we can also generate that. So service and then service stroke API. Yeah, awesome. So you can see we also have our service right there. Yeah, just allow me to. Yeah. Okay, awesome. So anyone with any questions so far? Maybe there's something I've done that felt unorthodox. Anyone? Before I proceed to, because after this, now I want to import the Bootstrap we installed using npm, and then we can get started with setting up the service.
I have a
Going once,
question.
going twice. Yeah.
So when you're creating the service, you used
Mm-hmm.
the S flag. I would like to know what it means.
Yes. So let me just type out the thing in full. So ng generates, then S stands for service, and then now our service name. And because I want mine to be within a folder, service, and then now I do API. So S is used for service, and we have all any other names like for example, when I did for C, that's C stands for component. Then you also have M for module and P for pipes. And also, I think you also have I. So there's a couple of what do I call them? Let me call them keywords. There's a couple of keywords that can be used to enable you to generate either components, services, pipes, uh, directives, I guess, and interceptors as well. I think there's a whole list that we can go through later. Yeah, I've answered your question.
Yes, yes, thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so I will proceed to styles. Let me just ensure that we've imported Bootstrap into our project. So we'll do at import, and then because we used npm, that means the Bootstrap files are within our node modules. So just do drop dist. Again, this is just force of habit. It's because I'm already sure of where they are, but I think I can also show you guys exactly where they are, so it doesn't look like I'm guessing the path. Yeah. So Bootstrap, yeah. Bootstrap is the Bootstrap means.css. So I can show you where those files are within our node modules. So we just look for our Bootstrap folder. Yeah. And then the dist, CSS, and then what does Bootstrap mean? Yeah, and then Bootstrap means CSS. Yeah. Yeah. So that's where I've gotten the path for our Bootstrap file. Yeah, awesome. Then now we can proceed to our service, and then I show you guys how to set up a service, or maybe we can start with the environments. So Brian, I don't know if uh, if guys here know Brian. So Brian created APIs for me, and yes, these are the APIs we have. So we have one to calculate the net salary, to save a bill, and to also get all bills. So I'll just set up our endpoint environment file. Okay, endpoints. Yeah, nice. So we have that set up, and then now this is how we receive our service file as new. So we will need to import three main things. That is the HTTP client, which will enable us to make the API calls. So it's just a library for the default library for Angular for enabling us make those API calls over HTTP. We will also import observables because that is what we will be subscribing to, so that we can also we can be able to have our callbacks so that we can get the responses or maybe error messages from our API, and also our environment file. So let me just do the imports. Again, this is just force of habit. And for guys who use VS, I think there's a what's it called? I think there's a plugin that helps with the imports. Yeah, I think I'll also quite hesitant to move to VS. I think the time I was beginning to code, I think I just found Atom easier to use. But of course, over time, you come to realize that VS Code is quite powerful. And yeah, I don't know how many of us know this, but Atom was discontinued as far as support. So I think I should be making my migration as soon as last week. Yeah, so I will import environment. Next, we import the environment. Yeah. Then, because we need the HTTP client, I think client. Yeah. So we'll also have it in our constructor. And yeah, I think what we need so far in our constructor, and then allow me to create a variable name for our endpoint. Give it a type string. Do environment dot API endpoint. Anyone with any questions so far? Hope I'm not moving too fast. Yeah, awesome. So our first API will be to resolve the net salary. So we can come here and then let's say calculate salary. Then inside here we will pass maybe our tax, our gross. Let me just call it the gross object because that is what we will need to pass here. And then allow me to just do type any because right now I'm not working and with a model. We will have our observable, also give it type any. Then here we'll do our return statement for the response that we will get from making this API call. And then it's a what method? It's a post method. And now we'll also give the post type return type of any. And this is where we will do this .base URL. This is where we'll put our endpoint. Go back to the file and see tax resolve. Awesome. Tax resolve, and then we will need to pass our gross object. Yeah. And then now we can finally do observe. Observe our response. Observe. Anyone who feels lost so far? Any question at this point? Yeah, so believe it or not, that's how we can simply set up our service, and then because we will come and also set up other endpoints for different functionalities, yeah, we'll also come back and add them at some point. But for now, let's move with the calculate net salary function. Awesome. So after that, we can say we've set up our thing, and then we can just come to our tax calculator component. Yeah. And allow me to also open the component TS on the right. Just feels much easier for me to work, having seen the HTML side and the TS file. Yeah, so let's just go into our Angular app. So yes, so you saw me import using the app selectors, uh, the navbar and the footer. And if we go into our navbar component, we'll see that that's the default uh, message that we have there for both. So, so yeah, anyone with any questions again so far? Let me not leave anyone behind, because from here now is where the real work starts. Anyone? Are we okay?
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Is it a must that when specifying the endpoint, you do
Mhm.
it in the environment section?
For the sake of environments, and by environments, I mean development and prod environments. It's usually advisable to do it there instead of having your string put like it's. I feel like it's easier even to come back and manage. Let's say you, because people also do multiple service files, you'd find that you have such a huge project that you need separate service files for every entity that you have. So it's easier to have it in a singular file, so that in case you need to change maybe the server um, IP address or maybe the port, it's easier to do it from a singular file. Usually anything that feels shared or reused, it's easier to have it on one file instead of having it on multiple, because when you need to change, you'll have to remember to change it on every other file. I hope,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. Thank you.
yeah, awesome. Because now in this scenario, maybe this could be our development server, and for prod, because we will use the environment.prod. For our prod, maybe we could have a different server, and during the build, Angular will simply come and use the prod version. Maybe our prod server could be maybe something like 155. So you see, it's nice to have the difference in environments to to use them in the different files as well. So that during the build and deployment to prod, it's easier for Angular to just default to the to the to the prod environment. Yeah,
Okay. Thank you.
awesome. So we can come and set up routes. We, we import the tax calculator component. Uh, so we have path and component. Let's just default path to component, and also have tax calculator defaulting to the same component. Yeah, awesome. Awesome. So now default. So in case you don't have any URL parameters, so it will default to tax calculator. So as you guys have seen, the tax calculator component is now visible on our browser. Awesome. So to set up, I think we can start setting up the navbar and then trickle down to the tax calculator part. So allow me to this here. We overwrite the default and see what we have. So this directly confirms that our bootstrap import is fine. If it was not okay, let me just show you what we would have gotten. Let me just comment out the import. We see, yeah, so everything is broken. So it means bootstrap is working fine for us. So I will remove a lot of the default default items here, like the drop down, disable action, and also the form. One community.
So last time the line.
Yeah. Awesome. So allow me to do something. Allow me to move. Let me just create a folder, a new folder called images, and then there we will have the Natujenge logo inside. Do we have here? Move it to images. Awesome, and then you can have it here. IMG. Source. Changes. Logo SVG. SVG. Text is Natujenge. Oh. Awesome. So nice. So we have our image. You can come and do some small styling on it. Do number brand. Allow me to just do image inside. Yeah. I do a height of yes. See how that looks like. That's a little too bad. Maybe you can try 40. Yeah, I feel like that fits snug. That's nice. Then choose to have background color on our number as white. Let's see if it will override. If not, we will just come and remove the default. But let's see. Awesome. But it's also visible. Let's just do something like box shadow. Then we give it some values, 2.09, and maybe have this like 5px. Awesome. So let me not concentrate too much on the number first. I really like us to make the API calls. Yeah, so we go back to our tax calculator component, and here we will import our service. Service, what did we call it? API service. API service or tax calculator service. Service. Service, and then have it in our constructor. Give it service. So here at me we can start by creating our function. Say calculate salary, give it type void. Now we can call our service, and then the method there that we had is also called calculate net salary. And then what does it take? An object, so we can just come and finish it up. Subscribe. Then we have 3 callbacks. So we will use. So I hope from the resource that I provided, you guys went through the callbacks from subscribe. So we have 3. So for guys who have VS, if you hover on the subscribe, you'll see that we have 3 callback functions. We have next, we have error, and we have complete. So error and complete are optional, but error is particularly nice for error handling. So it's nice to need to have that as well, and just give better error handling experience to the user. So we'll just give this type any, then we'll also have our error callback. Yeah, give it type any, an arrow function, and then we can log the errors. We can log the errors for now, then we can also log our response for now, so that we are able to see the field that we will be working with. Yeah. Anyone who feels lost so far? Anyone? Yeah, because I saw I've seen a couple of people use pipes and map. So I think this is one of the simplest ways to make an API call. Yeah. Any questions? So if I go back to our Angular app, you'll see that we have an error because the calculator net salary expects an argument, which is the object that we pass to it. So we'll come back and create a variable called what do we call it? Let's call it, and give it type any. Yeah. And then I can just go back to our notes so that we see what values Brian set up for us to be able to make there in our object to be able to provide as the request body. So you can see we have the gross salary, NSSF Boolean, NHF Boolean, pension Boolean, and the pension amount, mortgage Boolean and the mortgage amount, insurance Boolean and the insurance amount. So just for today's practice, I think we will make use of only the essential fields, here being the gross salary, and I think the others will be set by default. As long as I send NSF true and NHF true, they will go to the backend, and Brand will pick the default values for them. Yeah, awesome. So it's highly recommended to use a model, and for my case, I have an implicit model inside my component, but you guys could it's definitely recommended to use a model file that is outside, so that in case there's changes that's needed, again, you only change it from a single file. Yeah, so just allow me to have our model implicit in our component. So yeah, so we pass the gross object. Yeah, any questions so far? Any? We've just set up our service, and we've also called our service within our tax calculator component. So all that's left is to come and create the HTML, and yeah, just provide a UI where the user will be able to do the calling of the function. Anyone who's lost so far, or maybe anyone who needs something explained at this point? Anyone? Especially for the guys who were having trouble with completing the exercise, especially as far as integrating the APIs. I feel like this is your part to ask questions. Anyone?
Hello.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I was asking this observable this dot subscribe. Is it like a promise in JavaScript?
Exactly.
Normal promises.
Yes.
Okay.
So in Angular TypeScript, what they've given us instead is subscribe. I think me as a second, we just go through what subscribe is in Angular. Observables in Angular. Right. Yeah. Subscribing. Somehow they've explained it nicely just here. Awesome. So a handler for receiving observable notifications. So yeah, it is an object that defines callback methods to so yes, so subscribe is an object that defines callback methods to handle the 3 types of notifications that an observable can send. So yes, so I'd say this is similar to what we have as a promise in JavaScript, and also the I don't know if people have used, I think it's fetch, and then you do dot then. I think that's how it goes.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I think it's fetch and then dot then.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's a couple of ways of making API call. So this is not the singular, dictionary defined way of making API call, but this is the simplest way to ensure that you guys are able to call an API call. Again, I was going through a couple of people's repositories, and you guys are doing, big things and magic within your code. And I highly commend those groups who are able to proceed even with the API consumption. Yeah. So yeah, I hope I've answered your question. Is there any questions in the chat? I haven't also looked at the chat. No questions on the chat. Okay. If we're okay, I think we can proceed with our component. Now we can create our component and build our UI. So I will base it off of the Figma designs that we had. So yeah, so we can follow through it. So we can come to our styles. Maybe just do body. essential. Let's just do padding top 100 px. And then we can start setting up using container fluid. Again, class names from Bootstrap. I hope you guys you guys are aware of that particular one. And then we will so that we center our page. I think we can just go ahead and use row and then justify content center. Then have our thing inside column D7. Yeah, that's fair. Then we can start setting up our tabs and then trickle down into this section over here. So we can start with a tab. I think I'll just do tabs section. In a tab section, I'll just use buttons for this. It will be TN tabs. It's 2 times 2 because we have 2 of them. Yeah. Here we can have our tax calculator side of the tab. Calculator, and then also have the bill manager side. Yeah, awesome. So that's our first section, and then we have the gross salary section where we have our input. Just do input give. We will have a label, read gross salary. And then here have our input for min salary. Then we will use ng model. Then have, let me just come back to our component, see how we named our variable. Gross. We do gross object dot gross salary. Yeah, awesome. So our thing will fail on us. So allow me to borrow something. Yeah, forms module. Yeah, allow me to borrow this 3. And have now app module. Let's put them in our imports. So we have the times module. We have our forms module that will enable us to use model, the Angular for binding. I know there's people who have used form control. So I think for this exercise, I'll just use ng model. And then we also import browser animations. I think you'll see where the browser animations will come in handy at some point. Awesome. So just a heads up. So when you're using ng model, you also have to use the name attribute so that it makes your input more or less unique to ng model. Yeah, and let's see what we have so far. Our page. Yeah. To column D5. Yeah. All right. Yeah, awesome. We have our 2 sections. We have the tabs, we have the inputs, and let me just give inside a form group. Again, this is Bootstrap classes. And just use form group, and then give our input form control class name. Yeah, awesome. That looks much better at that point. Yeah, so we can also have our display here at the bottom. So we can do let's just give it a result section. Yeah, in the result section we have allow me to use dot column D times 2. Do we use column D or do we just do display flex? Display flex, deflex, then phi, and then between. Yeah, then we'll have let's pay. Let's just put this inside. What do we go for? Let's go for H6. Try one. So net salary, and allow me to use a span with display inline. And here we will have our binding for cross object object dot gross salary. Yeah, let's see if what. Awesome. We have our net salary on the left side and our value on. Sorry, we have the net salary label on the left and our values on the right. Yeah, anyone with any questions so far? We can same for the next couple of values. So let's see what we have. NSSF contribution. Yeah, feel free to interject even as I could. Feel free. Contribution. And maybe I can come back and explain maybe some of the class names, maybe what they actually do in the background with CSS. Taxable income. And tax before relief. Tax for relief. Let me just. Yeah. We have personal relief. Relief and NHIF relief. NHIF relief. A. And lastly, NHIF contribution. NHIF contribution. Nice. So we can see what we've created. Yeah. So we have our simple, not so good looking UI there, and then just for testing, I think. So do we proceed to style or do we proceed to make the API call first and then maybe you can come and do the styling afterwards? What would you guys prefer? Maybe also in the interest of time, I think you can. I think we just make our API call first so that we see what we have in our response. Yes. So here, allow me to use key up dot enter, meaning after the user has done their input, after they press enter is when our API call will be made. So just to avoid many API calls, if we use key up, it means it'll be making an API call every time the user makes an input. So just just to prevent many API calls being made, we'll use key up dot enter, and we'll call our calculate net salary function. We just do autocomplete of. Awesome. So any questions so far? Okay, awesome. So we've logged our response and our error response as well. So you can just come here and do. We just make API call. Let's just try with something like 30. maybe can remove the binding for the rest. Let me just remove default bindings. Give me a minute. Yeah. Maybe we can come and do the proper binding afterwards. Let's just see if our thing makes the API call. So let's try 30. Okay. I'll just press enter and you can see we've made our API call to resolve. And maybe if we come to our console, you can come and see the response from the API call. Yeah, so we have a gross salary. And we also have, maybe the most important part is what am I looking for? Yeah, tax pay. Is it tax payable? Something I'm looking for. Net pay. Yeah. So net pay is our final amount that we get after the default deductions have already been done and the tax calculation percentage has also been included. So yeah, anyone with any questions so far? So we've just made our first API call, and guys, it is that simple to make an API call. Yeah. Anyone with any questions so far? Especially for the people who are feeling like the people who were talking about Angular being hell, or just not being able to follow through with the consumption of the API. Anyone? Any question so far? Or have things even been made clear? It's nice to also receive any positive feedback. Anyone who feels like, now this thing is actually easier to move with. Anyone? Yeah. So yeah. So I hope no news means good news. Awesome. Yeah, so we can set up our default values on the HTML. Things like this is personal relief. Just can do personal relief as 24. Let's just find. Yeah. So we'll come and have a new variable for our response. Call it response. And give it type any. Yeah. Then we will come and do this dot cross response equals res dot body. There is no, in case it's empty, just give it that. Awesome. Then you can also have maybe error response available for the errors. And do this dot error response equals to error. I think it's usually error dot error. Awesome. Any questions so far? Anyone? Before you can just go and bind the values that we find from our response to this section. We have gross response, and what's the variable name? Personal relief. NHIF contribution. Gross response. NHIF amount. We have NHIF relief and NHIF. Yeah, my bad. Let me just have this one here instead. Response. NHIF amount. And let me just remove this one as our net salary. Oh, okay. Net salary. The net salary. Net pay. Yeah. We have NSF contributions, NSF amount, 200. I can bind it here. I hope I'm not going too far. Sorry, too fast for anyone at this point. Yeah. Income. Double. Yeah. So it was response before relief. Yeah, that means we'll have to calculate it from, wait, tax before relief is actually tax, the tax payable. Then the taxable income is minus, wait, let's see, taxable, yeah, tax payable is pay, pay. Relief, tax payable. Yeah. Am I finding the values right? So taxable, wait, guys, so what's the difference between taxable income and tax before relief? Anyone who knows the difference between the two? Pay. Pay minus response minus relief. Yeah, the relief here. Yeah. Personal relief. Minus NHF, or is it insurance? Yes, let's use insurance. Minus response dot insurance. Relief. Yeah, that's how tax before relief is calculated. Awesome. So now we can come and test again. Later, so there's an error. We can come and just do cross response. Come and have this. Question mark before so that it stops giving us errors. Yeah. Relief. And also out in the payee. Then finally an NHF amount. Awesome. Let's see if we still have. Awesome. Tax before. Okay. Awesome. So let's try calculate. I think instead of our 30K. Enter. Awesome. So we have our value. So that's the net salary, the NSSF, taxable income, tax before relief, personal relief, then pay. Maybe just for order, things come and have what we move down. Taxable income, salary. Let me just try arrange these things so that it feels easier to read. Taxable income for the net salary. Net salary, and then we can have the biggest deduction, which is pay. Net salary. I've messed up somewhere here. Pay. Contributions. Awesome. If I calculate again so that we have values there. Awesome. So anyone with any questions so far before we start now adding adding the UX complements that will enable us know when we've clicked when we're calculating the salary, maybe when everything has come. Anyone with any questions so far before we start adding some UX some UX on our UI? Anyone?
Hey. Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, hello. Yes.
What's the purpose of the question mark before the response on your template? I didn't quite get that.
Yes, so if you can check out our growth response, since I haven't put a sort of model for our cross response, because we would have essentially needed to do you know, the NSSF amount and then have our net salary. So instead of having all that, because I don't work within the constraints of the model, the question marks are just supposed to tell it that in case the NSF amount is not there, to not give us the errors. So in case it comes, it can do the binding, but if it's not there, let it not give us the errors of the missing values.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Another alternative to that would be to just have an ngIf directive. ngIf directive here for cross response. But since in our case we want to see the values even when they're still null, I think I would rather not have the ngIf at that point. But there's cases where having the ngIf there makes sense. Yeah. Awesome. So now I think we can proceed to maybe some styling. Anyone with any questions, especially with the Bootstrap class names? Maybe I can try explain what we've done with using display flex and justify content between. Let me just come to our CSS file. So in bootstrap.min.css, what they essentially have for dflex is this display flex. This is the styling that they have there. So they have display property and value flex. Imagine that is all they have at that point. And then since we've also used justify content between, what they have is justify content and then space between. So that's what these two class names essentially do for us at this point. So there's I think we can just look at the values for justify content. Yeah, so we have justify center, flex end, flex start, space around, and space between. Yeah. So what this thing has done for us is just put the titles to the left and the actual values to the right, and then just have space between, just like the word says, space between. Then I also used justify content center here to center our div. So let me just try to remove it and then we see what will happen. Yeah, so you can see our section there is set default to the baseline, but because I would like it centered, we use justify content center. Any other thing that looks new, especially with Bootstrap, before I go and start doing styling maybe for like the tabs, and then we can come and also do styling for the cross input, and then styling for a result section. If we're okay, I can proceed. Any questions on the chat? Any questions? Binding and routing. Awesome. So those are two different things, binding and routing. So binding is more or less what we are doing with the curly braces. This is basically just taking the value that we get from our TS file and enabling the user to see it on the HTML. This is basically what people did. If you can remember, I hope Princess Molly, hope you're here with us as I explain binding. So I remember you guys during the JavaScript practice, you guys were doing something like I think it was inner HTML. I'm not too sure. Inner HTML something, and then now you equate it to maybe a certain value, and then now on the HTML, maybe you bind it to maybe a div or maybe a p tag. It wasn't inner HTML. Can't remember what it was. Yeah, but essentially this is what binding means, just taking the value from the TS file and enabling you to have it on the HTML. Two-way data binding. Yeah. And then just to explain routing. Routing basically enables you to move from one component to another. Let's say let's generate a component for Teams. GC Teams. We can come to our app routing module, import Teams, Teams component. And then we can have the URL path for the team. So we can have path component. So that we go to teams, we can just set a path as teams, and then here we can call our component teams component. Let's try it. We can go to our navbar and then have router link. Router link and teams. Maybe, and we can also maybe have home. Read tax calculator. Tax calculator. You can try this and see for teams. So if we click teams, you'll see that we've routed to our component teams. And if we click home, we go back to our tax component. I don't know if that illustrates how routing works. Of course, there's deeper workings to routes. You can also pass query parameters. I think query parameters are things such as like here, like how they've done here, like how they've passed node ID. So you can pass query parameters, normal parameters, and a lot more. I think there's a lot more that you can do on routes. Yeah, I don't know if that has explained the workings of routing. Why do you prefer installing Bootstrap rather than using the CDN? Princess Molly, are you okay with the descriptions for binding and routing? You can just reply it. Awesome. Yeah, so let me go to Julia. So why do you prefer installing Bootstrap rather than using CDN link? Nice. So yeah, I don't know how many of us have used the CDN link. So in case there's no internet, I think you guys have realized that Bootstrap goes down because now you can't fetch the file remotely from where they've stored it using their CDN. So for me, just storing it locally means that I'm not fetching the files over the network. You know, I mean, if there's any file that you need, I think I usually highly recommend just having them on your local, so that in case you're working in a place where there's no network, and in scenarios also, I don't know if when you were doing things with APIs, you guys managed to talk about how there's some servers that don't allow internet connection because maybe you're working under a VPN. Yeah, so that's one reason. Either when you're working under a server that doesn't have access to internet, so you see that means you have your files locally and it's easier for them to be loaded. Another reason for me is just avoiding fetching files over the network, so that in case the file is not fetched, I think you guys saw, like when I commented the import for Bootstrap. Actually, let me just try it again so that I show you what happens in case the Bootstrap file is not fetched. Yeah, so that's what happened. So I think you guys have seen a couple of pages where before everything loads, you find just raw HTML, and it usually just looks not styled, just basic, until it fetches maybe a particular CSS file. So that's what happens with Bootstrap when you're using CDN. In case your internet is low or you're running on low bandwidth, it takes time to fetch the CDN file. So yeah, so for me, I just rather have the files locally, and yes, just to reduce bandwidth over the network. I think that's just the biggest reason for me. So highly recommend having the files locally. Also for people who use Font Awesome or maybe Google Fonts. I think speaking of Google Fonts, let's try look for a Google Font. And then you guys now can see why it's better to have the local files instead of having to use CDNs. My bad. Yeah, so what font would you guys recommend us to use? Anyone with any font they'd want to recommend before I default to Montserrat? Anyone? Awesome. Then let me default to Montserrat. Sorry. I feel like there's someone who is trying to recommend something and I can't hear them correctly or clearly. All right. Let me just default then to Montserrat. I hope that will enable us to see the difference. So I will So I'll just come then take the import statement and then put it in our styles.css file, and then come back and also take the font family property, which is font family Montserrat sans serif, and then put it on our body tag so that it applies to everything within our body. Awesome. I don't know if you guys can see that let me just try and do it quick. Let me just comment out the Montserrat. Yeah, so that's the default. And then after importing the font family, yeah, now the font looks different. So I think right now, because maybe I could be on good internet, maybe let me just try throttling. Let me just try use slow 3G and then refresh the page so that you guys see why it's just better to have the files locally instead of fetching it over the network. So let me just try refresh. Yeah, just give it time. So yeah, so this is what happens when guys are experiencing slow internet. So it takes a lot of time to fetch even the HTML files, leave alone the CDN files. Just give it a minute to simulate the first 3G. I really would like to show you guys what happens using CDNs. Okay, so lucky for us, we didn't see the demonstration of using that, but basically what happens is your page renders as default, and then it takes time for the CDN to maybe make the call to fetch whatever CDN you're using, be it a plugin or Bootstrap or this Google fonts. So I would very much rather have the fonts on my local project, so that even as we do the deployment, we have everything bundled up within your project, and just avoiding making more calls over the network to fetch more files. Yeah. Julia, I hope that has answered. Maybe you can answer on the chat if that answer was nice. I think CDN links are usually just nice for smaller projects that you're handling, but when you're doing enterprise projects, they highly recommend you to avoid using CDNs. Yeah. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so now we can proceed to doing some styling before we go to our bill manager side. Awesome. So we can come to a task calculator and then maybe have a class name for our page. Call it tax page. Then come to our SCSS, have our tax page. Maybe if we need to do styling, we'll just come and do that there. But we will come to our tabs section and then do .btn tabs and have styling for this. So we'll give them width of 50% for each. And then have text centered, line center, maybe have a letter spacing of 1px. And maybe just not be able to see them. You can just try to E1. Yeah, awesome. So we have our buttons evenly spaced. You can see we also have, we have nice spacing there at the bottom. Let me just try to put some spacing from the tab section. You can just do margin 20px and maybe just avoid margin on the x-axis. And we can do padding, and also maybe have padding on the y-axis and none on the x-axis, and then have both the bottom of 1px solid type. We type solid, and then we can give it the color E1. E1 is basically gray. For those guys who prefer using hexes, so E1 is just gray. Let's see what we have so far. So we're looking nice. Let's see let's just try increase 20. Yeah. Then now for the tabs colors, here's where we will need some JS to come in handy for us. So we'll have a click function, and we'll call our function Google tabs. Then for the tabs, Google tab, and then in each of them we will pass maybe a unique string. So here we can say net, and then here we can have build. Yeah, and then just for some styling, I think we can use the ng class. Yeah, wait, is it a directive? We can use ng class. Yeah, I hope you're also taking a note of structure of ng class. So ng class basically helps us apply CSS styling under certain conditions. So for our case, maybe we'll also create a variable called current tab. And the condition is if current tab equals to, let's copy the unique string names. So if our current tab is net, we will apply a certain styling called active tab, which we can actually create just now. So active tab for us will have the background color as given. And it's coming to background color default is white. Active tab will have it as that, and have maybe also the font weight as bold. It's do important also on that part. Maybe have our color set to something like 3C4043. Again, this is just a force of habit. These are colors that I've used a couple of times because they are Google recommended colors. I don't know if I sent. Let me just look for it. Google guidelines. Yeah. Yeah. So these are the colors recommended by Google by Google for text. And for me, I've just chosen to go with 3C4043. Usually this is my range for colors. The second color and need to the fourth color. 3C4043, 5F, and 8086. So those are usually my range of colors, just to provide neutral colors and contrast where needed, especially for like titles and normal text. So we will just come and use them. If I think I'll send this to the group in case anyone needs them. They have a whole category, a whole list of do's and don'ts, and just things that they recommend, especially for UI stuff. Yeah, awesome. Let me go back to our colors. Then we can create our functions. Now, GS can come and have toggle tab. So, toggle tab, it returns void because it doesn't return a value, but then it takes in a string tab, a string, and then can create a variable current tab, then have the default one as net pay. Okay. And then so here's what we'll do: this dot current tab equals the tab string. Yeah, awesome. Back to our thing. Yeah, nice. Let me just save that. Yeah. So if I click on the different tabs, awesome. Let me just look at it. I hope there's no error on the console. Yeah, so let's see what's up. Oh, sorry. Look, the passing into a function. Yeah, so for our tabs, yeah, that's how we. So let me also try and remove the blue outline. So outline and box shadow, none, also important. Yeah, awesome. So now we don't have the outline. Awesome. Any questions so far before we continue with further styling? Let me just check out the chat. Yeah, awesome. We can continue with our styling task. maybe you can move down to our gross input section. You can come in to gross input. Yeah, have a label, maybe have it as a font weight 600. Have the color set to 5F 6063. Yeah, and you can also maybe play with the font size. Maybe have it at a 1.1 REM. I hope you're familiar with what REM means. So REM stands for root element, and the default root element size is 16 pixels. So what this basically means is 1.1 times 16 pixels. Yeah, nice. Maybe we can have some margin bottom on our thing. Then we can also come and style our input. Maybe just give it thicker borders, just maybe like 2px solid, type solid, and maybe E1 as the color. Sorry, E1. So you can see our label is bolder with a different color. Our input is also bolder, and here we can also do the same thing and remove that, or maybe just have also states. We can have maybe the hover state, and have border as maybe a darker shade, maybe 3C 4043. Awesome. So when we hover, we have that state. We can also maybe have state active. Yeah, nice. And next, so we can have some margin bottom on our gross input section. And let me just do some formatting. Awesome. And now we can move to our result section. Anyone with any questions so far? And I hope you guys are seeing also the naming convention that I'm also using for my class names. Instead of having class names represented as using maybe a camel case, I've seen a couple of people do something like this. So for class names, this is not recommended for use, but instead just have your two names separated using the hyphen. Even if you have three, just separate the class names using hyphens and let them be in small case. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, so we can proceed to our results section. Anyone who's lost, or maybe someone who feels maybe I'm digressing, maybe going through styling. Anyone? Yeah. Any questions on the chat? Anyone? Awesome. We can come to our results section and maybe have our styling for the H6 with font weight of 600. Maybe we can try and increase the font size to something like you can try 1.1 RPM and have a color as a 5, maybe 3C. We just try 3C. 3C 43. So I highly recommend avoiding the color black as default, but instead resort to 3C 43. I think I'll send me the Google Guidelines guide so that you can maybe read further on why they also prefer not to use the hex code black, but instead just have shades of black instead of having the raw dark color. Yeah, H6 is looking okay. Our styling for our span, the color to 5F. Now our font, yeah, I think we just leave the font default to 1 REM. And it's font size 1 REM. And nice. Do we also, yeah, we can try include maybe some spacing in between the values. Allow me to cut and then just do deflex. And then under deflex, we can have margin bottom. Maybe let's try padding instead. Let's have padding 10px on the x-axis, sorry, on the y-axis, and no padding the x-axis. Maybe that's a little too much. I'll try 5. Yeah. We can also have styling for our results. Maybe just, and for me, maybe I'll just do border. Maybe the border of 2px solid. Box shadow. Let's try box shadow. Shadow, and you have the default values. Yeah. We'll use black, but black with an opacity of 0.09. Anyone who can tell me what values the 00 represent? Because here the box shadow can take four values, sorry, 5 values, and then our color value, which for me I've chosen to use RGBA instead of hex. Anyone who can maybe tell us what the 4 values represent? Anyone? Anyone who's bold enough to go for it? Maybe even in the chat. Anyone? Yeah. Okay. So I hope you guys will help explain this for us as we'll be doing it. So I'll have here value like let's say 5 10px as well. We'll reduce this to 6, and also have border radius as 8px. From border radius on our input for 4px. 8. Yeah. Awesome. We can have padding in our results section. No padding of 10px. I think that's enough. You can also just add a border for visibility, solid, F1, F1. Yeah. And 10 px and 10 pixels on the side. Let's have for values as 0 if they are blank. Yeah, awesome. So we can, we can test our thing and ensure we are still okay. Woohoo! Awesome. Yeah, so allow me to also add, instead of creating our own custom pipe, we have a currency pipe that will help us format value from 1,000 and onwards, so that you can have a comma. I feel like currency pipe, and I just use overflow instead. Woohoo! Yeah. Let me also have pipes. Currency. We have KES. Symbol as KES. This as USSD, so we see what will happen. Yeah, let's see what happens when we calculate. Yeah, at least so we have some formatting for the values. We also add something to the net pay and a symbol KS. And maybe we can remove, or let's just remove KS. KS replace. So let's try calculate again. Okay, woohoo! So we have formatting on our numbers, and we can see that our API calls are being made over the network every time we calculate. Yeah, awesome. Anyone with any questions so far before we move to Bill Manager, or maybe because of time, Marley, do we still have time to proceed? I feel like 12 would be my limit. Maybe we can have another session and then come back and finish on the Bill Manager side. Yeah, awesome. Or does anyone have any question before I bring my my session to a halt?
Hey, Wesley, I do have a question.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm going to take you back. This thing, I think you're doing it's property binding, and you're binding on the buttons. Or I'm sorry if I'm wrong. Like, I don't quite get it. Will you kindly read that code of line in English? Like what you're doing, per se, like in English. Yeah.
On the tab.
Yeah, on the tab, exactly.
On the tab.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I attached a click listener, of course, where we are calling the tab toggles. No, so the tab toggle will just enable us assign a string value to the current tab variable, so that we are able to apply the styling for active tab. So essentially, what this does for us, what the ng class directive does for us, is just apply certain styling under certain conditions. Was that helpful?
Yeah.
Yeah, so let me just go to the function that I'm calling toggle tab. So what we're doing is passing again. We are passing the string value toggle tab, and then we assign it to the current tab variable. And the current tab variable is enabling us to sort of provide a condition for the ng class directive to apply styling, that is active tab, and the active tab's styling is here, where we've assigned properties like the background color, the font weight, and the color of the text. That's why you can see every time we toggle, we have the styling applied to the button that has met the condition of active tab.
Okay. I get it.
Awesome. So there's more directives. So we also have ng class. There's ng style. There's things like NGIF. I think when we come to do the bill manager side, because I think for me, I'll reuse the same component, but have different sections. So you will see how having the toggle tab there will also come in handy in changing the UI from the tax calculator side to the bill manager side. We'll also come and use NGIF for that. Yeah. Anyone else with another question? Maybe there's something that still isn't clear. Anyone? Yeah, so I could I'll deploy this to my GitHub and send it to the group so that people can have a feel for it. Yes, we will come back and do next time. We'll come back and even do some small animations. So I hope you guys will be available for that. But I think next week you guys will be busy with the hackathon. Am I wrong, Marlon? Yeah, awesome. Anyone with any other question? I could deploy this, and then please feel free to chat me, especially on if someone else who's trying to ask something else on the chat. Top right, bottom left, top right, bottom left values. Princess Molly, am I not understand? Send the doc first.
Oh, the doc. Okay,
fine.
Your question.
To make what for what? For
the
top
box
right,
shadow.
Yes, awesome, nice. I think yeah. So let me just come back. Top right, left values. Awesome. So that's a nice attempt. But what we have here is, so the first value is moving the shadow from on the x-axis, then 6px. The second value is for moving the shadow on the y-axis, and then 10px is the shadow. Do I call it shadow? The shadow depth. I don't know how to call it. Shadow depth, or maybe shadow range. Let me call it shadow range, and then the last value is for shadow depth. So maybe we can try do something like that stupid value like 20 pixels. That means that we see what that will do thing. So I hope everyone is there. So let me just try, we save. Yeah, so you can see the shadow range has been increased. So it sort of makes the element feel like it's higher on the screen. Yeah, so that's the value for that. And maybe we can try add 10px and then we see what that does. Yeah, so it has moved the shadow further to the right. And if you do minus values, it will do the opposite. So now it moves the shadow to the left. If I do minus here, push the shadow to the top. Yeah. Awesome attempt. Awesome. And then for the shadow range, yeah, I think I've showed us the shadow range. I can try to do 30 pixels. And then you can see that the range feels almost pushed further, but for it to feel darker, you use now the fourth value where we can do maybe 5 pixels just to intensify the depth of the shadow. Okay, maybe just try a bigger value like 20. Yeah, and if you guys can see, the shadow has become darker, and essentially because I feel like for me I prefer using the color values just to make the color feel darker. So you can just try maybe a value opacity value of like 0.5. So the shadow feels darker that way. So for me, for shadows, I usually highly recommend this value of 0.09 for the opacity. So this is how I usually prefer having my shadows, so that it doesn't look like you've oversaturated the shadow, maybe overdone the shadow. Yeah.
I hope this session has been helpful to everyone who was having an issue with the Angular or getting started. Wesley, I hope you show them how to set up the project because they'll be needing it next week.
Yes. Okay. I hope guys with me when we were doing everything from NGNew. So NGNew, and then we set up using, we applied routing, then the SCSS style sheet, and then you guys also saw me do the installation for Bootstrap. I think I'll also give I'll send the installation commands even for things like icons, so that for people who also prefer using Awesome. For people who also love using Font Awesome, I'll let's see, start free.
Thank you, Wesley.
Awesome. Yeah, awesome.
Okay.